All right, we're recording. So we're doing number 32. Jacob, can you again identify what A, B, and C is for 32?
A -1, B 0, and C -6.
Good, -6. So we're gonna find our axis of symmetry, which is the x of the vertex, which is -b over 2a. So we got to use this equation every time. But what do you notice
Oh,
is going to
the
happen?
axis of symmetry is the bottom or the top of it. Like on this one, in this case, it's the bottom.
The bottom number. No, the axis of symmetry. Did you watch the videos from before, Jacob?
I watched last night's, or the one that's due
Coach,
today.
I'm gonna go watch the video and do today's homework.
Okay,
Okay.
do that then.
All right. Bye.
All right. So did you watch the one before that? That was Fridays. Did you watch Friday's lesson?
I watch all of them, but I didn't watch the one that's due tomorrow because I need to help with the ones due
Yes.
today.
So let's just talk about what the axis of symmetry is in general. So every parabola looks like a U, or if it's upside
Okay.
down, the N, right? Now, every parabola is symmetrical, and it's symmetrical at the vertex, okay? It's symmetrical at the vertex. So we call that line of symmetry the axis of symmetry. Kind of like a door hinge. It's the axis of where it swings open and close, okay?
Is it like the slope?
What's up?
Is it like the slope? Or
Not
like
exactly, because this line is a straight up and down line.
Can you say that again? What's the axis of symmetry? It's
The
the
axis
line.
is the vertical line where the U shape is supposed to reflect. So it's like a
So
mirror.
it's the y-axis.
It's not always in the middle, though. It's not always on the y-axis.
sometimes
Sometimes
like
it's the
this.
y-axis. You're correct. In this one, 32, it will be the y-axis. Well, we'll do 34 next where it's not, okay? But good point. It's usually the y-axis. We also have another line, though, that represents our min and max value. Remember that from the other lesson?
I remember this.
Yeah. So that bottom value is the y of the vertex. So your vertex gives you where it reflects over and where's the lowest, or in case of when it's upside down, the highest it ever gets to, okay? So with that in mind, we could figure out how to do this using all that information. Now look at this. This should look familiar. This is a question that we could have done in 9.1. But we're going to use our 9.2 method just to show that it works for both. So I erased the ABC, but we could just refer to it again. -b over 2a is going to get me the x of the vertex. So what's x of the vertex? -b over 2a. Don't forget.
It's 0.
It's going to end up being 0 because it's going to be 0 over 2 times -1. Who cares what's in the bottom because 0 is on top. So your x is 0. And remember, this is the x of your vertex. Now, you're going to take that x and plug it into your equation for every x you see.
Oh, so it's
So this whole
the
thing,
vertex is the minimum. The min is -6.
good.
Since
But
it's
this
going up.
case, remember, it's a -a, right? So it's going to open like this. So it happens to be the maximum in this
Oh,
case.
it's -8, so it's the max.
Yeah. But it's still, the number is correct. So the max happens to be -6, which is also the y of your vertex, okay? So if we're talking about Friday's lesson, you would be done because all I ask you is identify things. But let's go to today's lesson. Today's lesson, we're going to actually graph these things. So here's the next step. This would be step 4 on the post, I believe. Step 4 is now we're going to make our table with 5 slots, okay? We're going to make our table with 5 slots. One's for X and Y. So 1, 2, look at these. If anyone has a OCD, I apologize. But
I think me and Liam are good.
Yeah.
so X and Y, right? X and Y. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slots. Now, we just found our vertex, and we always put the vertex in the middle, okay? So we always put the vertex in the middle. And the vertex we just found is 0, -6. All right. our domain is going to depend on the x of the vertex. So we want 2 smaller and 2 bigger than 0. What's 2 bigger than 0? 1 and 2. What's 2 smaller than 0?
Negative
-1,
one.
-2. Hopefully you notice this is very familiar to our 9.1 lessons, which is just graphing from -2 to 2. Because guess what? B is 0, it will be the x-axis be at 0. So now we're going to plug it in. But you got to keep in mind, these are symmetric. Because they're symmetric, what really helpful is I only have to solve for one of them at a time. So I'm going to plug in the positive one. I figure that's going to be easier. So -1 squared. And it's very important to know, it's 1 squared first, then the negative hits it, -6. So that's -1 minus 6. So that's -7. So if this one's -7, this one's also -7, okay? And then let's do a different color. I guess I'll do some black. This one over here, we're going to plug in 2. So -2 squared -6, -4 minus 6 gives me a -10. So if the -10 is here, the -10 will also be here. Okay? So we have
For what?
for -2. If
What do you
this
mean?
is the y for +2 is 10, and remember, symmetric, so you go across, this one is also -10. You don't have to do it twice.
So the positive. Wait. I'm confused. Why do we need the -10?
The -10 is the y value at +2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is that the top of the parabola or?
No, let's graph it and we'll see how it looks. So 0, -6. So 0, -6 is right here. We got 1, -7. So it looks like the difference are 2. So we're going to go here and here. And then 2, -10. So that's here and here. Let's make our U shape.
Does it matter how you graph it? Like if the
The
negative
points
three-
should be correct, but look at how ugly this one is. It doesn't matter if it's pretty or not.
Okay.
But the points should be correctly placed. Like I usually do with my graphing tests and questions, I'm usually mostly looking at the table, and then I'll just take a quick look at the graph. If the graph looks like this, because sometimes you'll get something like this, then I'm going to be like, yeah, you did something wrong. But if it looks like the general shape, I don't mind.
Okay.
So we got that. And that's how your shape looks like. And then look at what we were talking about. The highest point that it goes to, is -6, which is the y of the vertex. And let's say, pretend if I was a better drawer, the axis of symmetry would be at x equals 0. Remember, x equals a number will give you a vertical line. So if it's x equals 1, it will be at 1. If x equals 10, it will be at 10. X equals 0 happens to be the y-axis. So the left and the right is the same.
Do we just have to graph it, or do we also have to label the vertex? And
For this section, you just had to graph it. No, you make the table and graph it. So you don't need to label the vertexes for me, but I was just referring it because Jacob asked about the last thing, so it made sense to combine them, you know?
Okay.
So
Can we
I'll
do
do
one more?
one where I spec you how it looks. So stick around at least for that, okay?
Yeah,
So let's do number 34 together, okay?
Okay.
All right, I'm going to clear all this. So we're going to do 34 together, okay? So we have, just want to, I'll just use this space right here. So we have this, this, and this. So before we start, we identify A, B, and C. So that's going to be a 1, a 2, and a 5. Okay. So now let's find the axis of symmetry, which is the x of the vertex, so -b/2a. So the top here is -2 because b is +2, so that goes here.
So it's -1, I think.
Yeah, so after you do all your math, it's going to be -1. So -1 is your x of the vertex. That's very important. -1 is the x of your vertex. Now, let's find the y of the vertex. We're going to plug in -1 into here. So -1 squared plus, and make sure it goes into every x that's there, -1 plus 5.
So it's +1 plus -2. That's just what? -1, and then it's +5. It's +4.
Good.
So y
So
is 4.
after you all do all the math, you're going to get +4. Good. So 4 is your y of the vertex, and that's pretty important to know. Okay. Okay. So what are we going to do with all that information? Well, what we're going to do is make a table again. So I'll make my table over here. And we're going to make our table with x and y. And now we're going to do our numbers. So our x comma y for our vertex is -1 comma 4. Okay. So -1 comma 4. Our domain depends on what our x of the vertex is. So we're going to go 2 smaller than -1, which is -2 and -3.
2 smaller or 1 smaller?
2 small. Well, we go 1 and then 2, right?
Oh.
And then the next one is 2 bigger, or 1 and then 2 bigger. So 0 and then a +1. And then we're going to keep in mind that this is a symmetrical thing. So if I find one of them, I find the other. So here, if I find one of them, I find the other. So
-2 and 0 are going to be the same thing.
yes, -2 and 0 are going to be the same thing. That's very important because now the middle is no more at 0 like it was in 32. Our middle is at -1. So then you kind of imagine the mirror has been shifted one. And you'll see how that graphs out, okay? So 0 and -2 is the same. So which one's easier to plug in?
0.
0. So if we plugged in 0, and I'll do it in this lavender, 2 squared, x0 squared is 0, plus
Just
0,
5.
5. So it's going to be just 5. Good. So that's 5 over here, which means I get the freebie, buy one, get one free here. I get 5 over there. Now I'll do it in the orange, next one, which is plug in 1, which takes a little bit of math, but that's not too bad for us. It's like we're in a math class or something, you know. So this is 1 squared plus 2 times 1 plus 5. You could plug in -3 and you'll get the same answer, but 1 seems to be easier. So 1 plus 2 plus 5.
That's 8.
That is 8. Good. So then if this one's 8, we get the freebie. This one's also 8. Okay, so let's just graph it and then see if that makes sense. So at -1, it's at 4, so it looks like it's right here. At 0 and -2, it's at 5, so I'm going to put here in here. And then -3 and 1, it's at 8. So -3 and 1, it's up here and up here, right at the corner of this graph. Then we make our U shape. And that's how your graph should relatively look. And this is 34 from part A. Hey, look at that. That looks the same. 34 right here. But I just want to again point out, in this one, our axis of symmetry is not at the y-axis this time. It's at x equals 1. So in the red, it reflects exactly the left to the right. And there are minimum values. So this is a minimum because it's facing upwards, right? So the minimum value is the y vertex, which is a +4. Okay. So you notice how it kind of has been shifted, and that's okay. The things will be shifted, and we know it shifts from this proportion, negative b over 2a. So that's the formula. So that formula is the thing you need to make sure you know, because that is how you have to start, and that will lead you to everything else. Okay?
Yeah.
Feel better about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, no problem, guys.
Great. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
You too.
You too. Is it still active? Oh, shit. No. We started at 10:15, right? 10:50, right? Right. Yeah. And then the next one is. Just gonna make sure. Hmm. Oh my god, you know what I did? I just stopped recording. Like a fucking idiot.